Thank you. Welcome to this meeting of the Health, Care and Wellbeing Scrutiny Committee being held on Thursday the 3rd of October 2024. For those present in the room, if the fire alarm sounds, please leave the building by the nearest exit and make your way to the fire assembly point in the car park. Papers and recordings. The agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on the Herefordshire Council website. The Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and is making a recording. For participants in the room, please use the microphones to speak, pressing the button on the right-hand side. Please speak directly towards the microphone, otherwise your contribution may not be picked up on the live stream. Please ensure that mobile phones, laptops and other devices are turned to silence. Others are permitted to film, photograph and record public meetings, providing that it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. There are no members of the public present at the moment. Only committee members present in the meeting room may vote. We have a number of people in attendance as virtual participants. Can I request that they use the raise hand feature within the system if they wish to contribute and introduce themselves when they are called upon? Item 1 on the agenda is apologies for absence.
Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Polly Andrews, Councillor Jenny Bartlett and Councillor Simeon Cole.
Thank you. Item 2, name substitutes.
Councillor Louis Stark is present as the name substitute for Councillor Polly Andrews. Councillor Diana Toynbee is present as the name substitute for Councillor Jenny Bartlett. And Councillor Alan Williams is present as the name substitute for Councillor Simeon Cole.
Thank you very much for all of those substitutes. Item 3 is declarations of interest. Do any members wish to declare any interest in the agenda item, in any agenda item? No hands. Item 4 is the minutes. The minutes document of the meeting held on the 29th of July 2024 is included in the agenda, pages 11 to 18. No matters of accuracy have been notified to the monitoring officer. Are committee members who were present at that meeting content that I sign the minutes as an accurate record? Yep, thank you. Item 5 is questions from members of the public.
No questions have been received from members of the public on this occasion.
Thank you. And item 6, questions from members of the council.
And no questions have been received from councillors on this occasion too.
Thank you again. So now we move on to item 7 on the agenda, which is one of our substantive items, and this is supporting our care leavers. So as this is predominantly ages 16 to 25, we thought that we need to look at all ages approach. It is the local authority's duty to support our looked after children who are leaving or have left our care. Whilst the report's purpose is to provide information to support this committee in scrutinising our services, it is important to understand the journey that children and young people have travelled upon to get here. You may wonder why the Health, Care and Wellbeing Scrutiny Committee have chosen to look at this area of care. But we must all recognise the continuum and transition from child to a young person and then into adulthood, and the complexities of these transitions in general, and perhaps more specifically for any child who has been born into or moved through the local authority's care system. This should be through an all ages lens. It may be as a consequence of this report and the discussions that we're going to have that a recommendation may be made to form a joint piece of work with the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee. So at this point, I'll hand over to Tori. I think you're going to present this item on the agenda. Thank you.
Sorry. Good afternoon and thank you. So my name is Tori Lynch and I'm the Permanent Head of Service for Corporate Parenting. So as it says on the slides, local authorities are responsible for being good corporate parents, and this is by aiming to prioritise the needs and voices of our care leavers in policy and service decisions. And I actually went to some of our care leavers and asked of them what they would like me to say to you in respect of corporate parenting. So one of our young people said, "I think it's important for the council to act as good corporate parents to the young people of Herefordshire, as it enables us to have stability. The aid of council staff versus the lack of provides a sense of security and ensures that young people do not feel ignored." And then another young person added, "Find us opportunities like you would for your own children. And when you see opportunities, have us in mind." So I couldn't have written anything better myself, and I've used their words directly. Next slide, please. Thank you. So pathway planning is a piece of work that we do, a plan that contains targets and contingency plans for the care leaver, covering all aspects of their world really, health and wellbeing, employment and training, accommodation and independent living skills, because for our care leavers, they're facing those realities potentially much sooner than some of their peers. So we support them with that comprehensive pathway planning. So the social worker incorporates their wishes and their views, and it's removed every 6 months or if there's a change in circumstances. So provision of a personal advisor. So local authorities must appoint a PA for care leavers aged 18 to 21, but then we have a duty to provide support up to the age of 25, and that's in recognition of, people aren't leaving home early these days. People get lots of support at home, so we need to try and do the same for our care leavers. So in Hereford, we will actually aim to co-allocate a personal advisor from the age of 16, so that our young people start that preparation and transition work. So they will still have their social worker allocated at 16, but additionally a PA. And then once they turn 18 is when they have their PA who guides them the rest of the way. And they provide emotional support, practical assistance, helping them navigate challenges such as, I could imagine my son getting a water bill and not thinking he would have to pay for water, but some of our care leavers at 18 are needing to face those, and we're there to support them every step of the way. And also with education, employment and life skills. Next slide.
Can I just interrupt you, don't mind? Can you give us some idea of the background of personal advisors? Because looking through the papers, I was wondering who this person was, where they came from and what their relationship was to us as a council, and also perhaps to the care leavers that they're trying to guide through life.
So our personal advisors are all employed by the local authority into that specific role, personal advisor. They come with lots of different experience, our personal advisors. So at the minute we have, I believe it's 14, Stacey. We've got 14 personal advisors who work in our children, our care leavers team. So we've got 2 team managers, and they manage the personal advisors who sit under them. Is that sufficient, or what else were you asking?
And does that mean that personal advisors cover more than one care leaver then? Yes. So that could be an issue. Okay, thanks.
Hi everybody, my name's Stacey Edwards and I'm Service Manager for the Care Leavers Service, and I've been supporting the service since 2018. So in terms of the background of PAs, they come from a range of disciplines. So some staff have come from supporting children in residential homes, some staff have worked in education settings, some might have we've got some that are actually trained counsellors. So they come from a range of disciplines, and really what we want is for them to be able to build relationships with young people. So they need to have some experience of working with that age group and have a good understanding of the challenges that young people face when they've lived in care. So we try to appoint PAs with varied experience so they complement each other, but they do support a number of care experienced young people. We can't financially support for each care leaver to just have one PA to be one care leaver. We've got large numbers.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on, the local authority has a responsibility to provide a range of financial assistance to care leavers, and we've explained some of what we can offer. The care leaver financial offer is something that the team use to help support young people in different ways. So what we have is a setting up home allowance, and that's £3,000. It has been increased. It was £2,000 for a very long time. And what that does is it helps a young person to set up in their first home. So that's there to support them with white goods, furnishings like a bed, and other things to make that home theirs. So we support them to make sensible decisions around items. I have had a young person wanting a TV at about £1,000 because he thought that would be amazing to have, but actually he might not have been able to fit that in a different property if he moved, and it's not very sensible. So we do offer a lot of support and guidance. We offer advice and guidance around budgeting, managing bills, like we've mentioned, accessing benefits and funds for education, training and employment. There's various things that we offer in terms of a clothing allowance to help buy items for interviews. If they're going for a specific interview, it might be that they need some support setting up a business, or it might be they need some equipment for their first job that's relevant to that role, and we would support with that. We also offer the council tax exemption, which is amazing. We support young people up to the age of 25 with that, and that is for young people in and out of county. We didn't want it to be unfair for those placed out of county to then have to pay council tax when their peers didn't, if they lived in Hereford. So we can move on. Okay, so we know that some young people are not ready to live alone at the age of 18. They may not have the skills and experience to be able to manage that because they may have multiple vulnerabilities. And so as a local authority, we offer a range of housing options to young people. So between the ages of 16 and 17, those young people who don't need care but need more support can be placed in supported accommodation. And that is accommodation where there would be staff available to assist them, usually 24 hours a day. Because we know getting your first home can be very, very exciting for young people, and it might be that they want to invite round lots of their friends, and it may be that some friends might not want to leave, and so we do have situations that we've learnt from the past around supporting young people to be able to manage their front door and have the skills that's needed to be able to live alone in the future. So we have two services that we have in Hereford that we use. The first service offers homes for 16 young people, and what we do is we make sure that we are involved in that referrals process. We match really carefully to make sure that young people have a successful experience and get on with each other.
And we work really, really closely with commissioning around that to make sure that we've got enough accommodation wherever possible in Herefordshire. And we know there's a shortage, but we're working on expanding that offer. We also want to make sure that when young people experience emergencies, and it might be that their situation with their carer breaks down, we want to make sure that they've got access to emergency accommodation, and we have some of that in Hereford to support them. And then we have we've got another service which offers the ability to have some step down provision. So it might be that they still need some support, but they live further away and they don't have it 24/7, and it's a way of transitioning them to living alone. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Wendy Dyer, Commissioning Manager. So, as Stacey's outlined, we've got a number of supported accommodation units. I'm happy to take any questions on that. And in addition to those, we've also got a local framework. This was developed to broaden the available options to accommodate care experienced young people in Herefordshire. And the framework provides us an opportunity to source local accommodation or support, or both, from landlords and support providers. And it focuses on those providers who are able to offer properties within a 10-mile radius of Herefordshire. It isn't for an exclusive use for Herefordshire care leavers. It's a framework, but the majority of these providers are now working with us exclusively to offer homes for our young people. And at the moment, we've got 4 providers on that framework offering around 40 homes for young people in total, which is a great addition to the county. In addition to that service, we've also got a county-wide housing-related floating support service. This is not exclusive for care leavers, but it is for people aged 16 plus, and the aim of that service is to prevent homelessness. So it's tenure-free, so that means a young person could be living in any type of accommodation, and that accommodation is at risk, it's breaking down for whatever reason, so there is a mediation element within that contract to support young people aged 16 to 25. And there is also a focus on the provider developing links with post-16 education settings to deliver education workshops to prevent youth homelessness in the future. And we're also part of a regional framework to deliver supported accommodation. So that also gives us another option, when looking for placements for young people. And those are arranged through our home finding team. Thank you.
Can I just thank you, officers? It's good that you're following each other, and I'm sure after the whole presentation and the slides have gone through, then we'll open it up to committee members for questions, unless there's something obviously burning.
Yeah. Thank you. Hayley Crane. Oh God, I forgot my title. Head of Housing Services. So following on from Wendy, Wendy discussed the commission service. So we also have a number of non-commission services. So Herefordshire Council has developed a pathway of accommodation for those aged 18 and over. The accommodation is available for those who are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless. So in the council, we're not classed as a stock holding local authority. We have properties, we have very few properties. We don't have enough to be classed as stock holding. So any accommodation that we bring forward, we have to acquire or purchase. So we have been extremely lucky to date. We've been very successful in securing the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government grant funding, and this has assisted us, along with our own match funding, to purchase properties for these vulnerable client groups. We currently have it's a very local homeless hub that offers accommodation and support. It's just up the road. It's very well used. We work with the applicants in there. We get them to a point where they're starting to become tenancy ready, getting more independent so that we can move them on to transitional accommodation. We have 12 one-bed units dotted throughout Hereford. It's classed as transitional, like I say. They have low-level support provided to them, so we don't just move them in accommodation and leave them. We still work with them. That accommodation is for ideally a maximum of 2 years. We don't get to the end of the 2 years and say that's it, you've got to move on. If they need more time, we will continue to work with them in the hope to get them tenancy ready to then move them on to more permanent accommodation, be it private sector or housing association. We also work, last bit, we also work very closely with one of our support providers, and they have in addition 12 one-bed ensuite units and a couple of pods. So that through the path work, there's nominations into those properties. So we're making sure everybody knows what accommodation is there. They step down or move back up depending on their support needs until we can move them on to secure permanent accommodation.
So in the care leavers service, we have a specialist worker, a specialist housing PA, who works with care leavers who we identify as being at risk of homelessness who are homeless. And we work really, really closely together with those young people and their PAs to help young people to avoid homelessness in all instances, to prepare them really well for moving on. And what we want to do is to make sure that they have the right support into the right accommodation at the right time. So it takes a lot of careful planning, but it's been a really, really effective service to date. We have a hope that we have more young people who stay put with their foster carers post 18. So that's an option that's national. So we know that it's better for young people if they do stay put with foster carers, their outcomes are better. And at the moment we do have a number of young people choosing to do that, but our aim would be to grow that and have more young people where they don't experience residential homes, and young people want to stay with their carers longer. Sometimes there's a myth about moving out and you get greater freedom, but actually it's really quite difficult to move out when you're 18 years old and face a number of challenges. So we are working with the housing PA to support foster carers to understand the benefits for young people to remain in their care and to support them for that bit longer, to learn the skills that's needed really to move on, so that when they do move on, it's successful and they don't need to come back to us again for a second chance in accommodation. We can move on.
Me again, sorry, it's confused me because all the slides have jumped around. So we have a pipeline of accommodation. It's a continual pipeline. We don't just deliver, walk away. We're constantly looking at our needs data and what in addition we need to provide. So as I've already said, we have been very successful in securing grant funding, and some of that grant funding has enabled us to purchase an additional 15 units under the Single Homeless and Accommodation Programme. We have purchased 7, we have additional offers in, so we've got 2 more properties to find. What we're doing with this accommodation is we're trying to move away from Hereford City. Everything we deliver and supported is in Hereford City. We're trying to now move out into all the market towns. So this accommodation is being divided between Hereford and Ross-on-Wye. The units will have support as well. They'll be linked into some of the units will be linked into a contract with CCP. But not only are we purchasing the units, they will have a full refurbishment. They will be brought back up to a high standard, the standard that we would expect for our children. So they will be fully kitted out, carpets, painting, white goods, furniture. And then when they leave that accommodation, they actually take all of that furniture with them. So they're set up ready for when they move into their permanent accommodation. So we're working hard at the moment on that. We also work really closely with our housing associations. Most of the housing associations purchase their accommodation through Section 106 sites. So we have the luxury within the 106 to actually nominate some of those properties for different categories. So we're always trying to ring fence units in there for children's services. And as a local authority, we have also set aside £5 million to bring forward additional accommodation. So we're working closely on trying to create a pipeline to meet our priority groups, and children's services are one of those priorities. And then in addition to that, we have got 2 more properties in Hereford City, properties where we are just about to apply for planning permission. We will then convert those as well, creating at least 6 additional 1-bed units, again for children's services. Again, they will be decorated and brought up to a high standard, fully furnished, and they will form part of that pathway as well.
Thank you. And in addition to the what Hayley's outlined in relation to commission services, Stacey outlined Service 2. That is a contract that's coming to an end next year. So we're currently scoping options to recommission that service, to add additional accommodation in. So that service will move from offering 8 homes for young people to 15 as some step-down accommodation, and it's going to offer an end-to-end service to include some floating support in tenancies when young people take up new homes through our choice-based letting system Home Point. We're also currently scoping options in conjunction with our strategic housing team to deliver some shared tenancy schemes for our unaccompanied asylum seeking children in the county. And we're looking at how we can further expand on our offer to care leavers within our allocations policy, with potential option of direct lets for care leavers, either as a standalone procedure or as part of further enhancements to that procedure.
So moving on to education, employment and training, we hold the same values for our care leavers as we would our own children, and we want them to get to a point where they're able to really enjoy the benefit of supporting themselves in employment, but we know there's a pathway to get there. So we offer a range of support for young people depending on their individual needs. In terms of the numbers of young people who are out of education, training and employment, they have increased locally. And that's been as a result of training providers unfortunately not being able to continue to offer services in Herefordshire. So we've been responsive in being able to look at how we can address that challenge, and we have commissioned a service called Bespoke Mentoring. That's a specific service for care leavers who aren't in training, education and employment, and they actually employ ex-care leavers who have experienced their mentoring service in the past. So they're becoming mentors themselves, understand the challenges that they face, and they work on building a young person's confidence, helping them to write a CV, to do mock interviews and help them to gain work experience in pathways that they want into employment. So that's something that we have just mobilised. It's going really well, and what we want to do is to support young people to be able to develop a plan within their pathway plan to get them into employment in the future, but it might be they need to do some training or education in the meantime. We have been successful in offering guaranteed apprenticeships, so we've got 4 care experience young people who've been successful in gaining an apprenticeship in the council. We want to offer more, and they're in a range of departments. Children's have some, but we've also got one who's managed to gain an apprenticeship in the legal service, and they'll become a solicitor in 7 years' time, fingers crossed. We offer employment support, and we work with the staff at the Youth Employment Hub, and we offer young people a lot of support if they have the potential to go to university and study. So we offer a £2,000 a year bursary. We offer them accommodation in the summer holidays if they can't stay where they are at university, but depending on that young person's individual circumstances will depend on whether we need to offer any additional financial support to them. And if they remain in education beyond 25, there's a legal duty for us to support that beyond that time. So we're really aspirational. We've had 12 young people go to university, and each year that grows. So we're really proud of that, because nationally the figures are very, very low. Okay. Locally, we offer a range of support to young people around their health and well-being. So we have a really fantastic membership to Halo that our young people really value. So they can go to Halo and enjoy a range of services, swimming lessons, sports clubs in the summer holidays, but they can go and use the gym. And our separated young people really enjoy having access to the gym. And so that made us think about our young people who live outside of the county and whether our offer is fair to those who are outside. And so what we do now is we make sure that young people who are out of county can still access a gym membership. We just have to manage that in a slightly different way. We have a healthy living programme where we would offer support around fitness, sexual health, substance misuse and nutrition, and we make sure that we link young people into those services in the community. We've been able to successfully recruit a consultant psychologist through CAMS. I was involved in the interview process for the psychologist, and that was really positive. They're going to work alongside us as a service to help young people with particular challenges around their mental health. And we've got commissions health services that are available to young people that we have to work really closely with in Herefordshire, but also outside of the county where young people have experienced poor mental health and might have been in hospital and placed elsewhere. We still work really close with those providers beyond the age of 18 to make sure young people can access the support that they need. We also have a service called Safer Connections, and that's a psychological service who are providing training, consultation and direct one-to-one therapeutic support for care experienced children, and our PAs would be involved in supporting that therapeutic process and take those skills to support that young person beyond 18. Okay.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes, I'm all right. So moving up to adulthood pathway. So thinking in particular about some of our young people who've got complex needs, who may need to transition from children's services to adult services. And it's an area that needed some attention in terms of us in the council. And you can see from the diagrams here that there is that clear pathway now. So the diagram on the left is showing referrals from the Children and Families Directorate, so that's the children, young people that we're working with, and then on the right it's for those people who weren't known to us. So clear pathways. And some of the work that's been done to make sure that we have a good transition for those young people is that there are now monthly meetings between the young adults team and the children with disabilities team. There's a shared tracker so everybody's got oversight and can keep an eye on those children who are moving up to adulthood. Early notifications, so we're looking at the age of 14 because these are some of our really complex children and young people. The young adults team attend annual reviews of children education and healthcare plans from the age of 15, again, so that early joint twin tracking. And continuing healthcare assessments are undertaken together at 17 alongside children and their parents. So I won't go through them all, but I think you can see there is lots and lots of joint working between the services now to make sure that, you know, we're not hitting that really difficult point at 18 and haven't got services set up. And then the last slide is a bit of an illustration. So Liam, and that isn't the real name that we've used there, was a child who was open to the Children with Disabilities team from 2012. From 2019, the children's social worker and the young adults team were both going to the annual reviews. Prior to him turning 18, a joint assessment was undertaken. It involved his family, the young adults team and the children's team. And at this point it was agreed that it was in Liam's best interest to remain with his foster carers, but then actually had to change his mind and said he wanted to move out, so there was lots of work done with him around his independent skills, but then he changed his mind. And the outcome for Liam now is that he's been supported to remain with his foster carers under a shared life scheme. So to this day, he's got an appointed deputy to support with his finances. He attends Horton Day opportunities, and it is his goal to work towards supported living. He's got his personal advisor that's helping him with that, and his social worker to create that clear moving on plan. And the team continue to work together to help him realise his goals. And most importantly, he's telling us that he's happy, he's excited, and it's a good outcome for Liam. And that's the last slide.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tori and other officers. That's been an enlightening few slides, hasn't it? Before I open it for questions and comments from committee members, what I would say, that was a really good presentation, so that you finish on the high where the individual has been supported and their journey has been, even though it was their choices, you address them all. And I think that's one thing that we're looking at, to make sure that every child has a voice, and it shows that from that storyboard. So I'm going to go to the first slide in the Appendix 4 slides. So, you know, we're looking at organisational needs on there, and what I wondered is if we could, or you could, add some of the young person's perspectives on those organisational comments. Anybody else want to say anything about that one, or shall I move on to the pathway planning? This is on 56 and I'm on pathway planning. So you state that pathway plans are reviewed every 6 months on this slide, or when there is a change in the home. Do all care leavers have an up-to-date pathway plan? And if not, what action's been taken to address it? As this is a critical potential cliff edge. I think Councillor Stark's been concerned about this cliff edge that we need to reduce.
So if I can explain before you come back to respond to the chair. One of my concerns, and I looked at some of the case studies that have been provided, they're not all Herefordshire case studies, I accept that. But when you looked at it from the point of view of the child and their experience as a care leaver, I would like to know more about that and whether we do gather information on that. It's clear that compared to, say, our own children, there's much more of a cliff edge between going from the care system where you're looked after, as a lot of the care leavers said, almost from cradle to grave, as it were, but obviously you stop at 16 or 18, but certainly from the cradle upwards, they don't seem to have the opportunity to experience or to be challenged with some of the sort of issues that might come out when they get older. For example, one of the care leavers said, I didn't even know what a bill was. I didn't know how to interact with people. I didn't know how to shop. There's a whole load of issues around that. And it just seems to me that this cliff edge is one of the key things, that how do we ensure that these children who may not have had the same life experiences even before 16, how do we ensure that that cliff edge is made as easy as possible to get over? That's the point I'm trying to make.
So you're asking really how they are gaining their life skills?
Yes. And in a way, and this is why I'm glad Councillor Powell is here, I really want to, at some stage during this debate, look after children, look at what they are actually being taught in terms of getting prepared for leaving care as well, and whether some of the policy decisions around taking children into care actually takes account of the fact that they're going to become care leavers eventually if they stay in care. So it's around that sort of cliff edge and how we're managing both before they experience it, so that we can actually make sure that when they do experience it, it's not as traumatic as it seems to be from some of the children in the case study.
Thank you, Councillor Stark. So does anybody want to answer about the pathway plans, Tori?
Well, I might start the other way around if that's okay. So I think it's a really important observation you make around should children be coming into care in the first place. And I think there is absolutely an emphasis on supporting children within their families where possible. And the Children Act guides us to do that, and there's legislation that guides us to do that, because we know that our care leavers tend to have poorer outcomes than their peers. So that is heavily influenced in the work that we do. We've got a duty to do that, and if children can't stay with their immediate family, we have to look at wider family first. So some of the children in care that we're talking about actually might be with kinship carers. So they might be with kin, but those kin need the support of the local authority to help them care for those children. So absolutely, that is enshrined in everything that we do in children's services. Where possible, that focuses on that early intervention and keeping children at home. But if it isn't safe, we can't do that. And so a small proportion of all of the referrals that come in, a small proportion of those children will come into the care of the local authority. And, you know, we know there are poorer outcomes for our children in care. So we have personal education plan meetings in school that happen every 6 months. There are health assessments for our children. And it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, because whilst it's all good intentions, because we know there could potentially be poorer outcomes, it can sometimes make our children feel different to their peers, that they're seeing a social worker, they're having meetings at school, they're having health assessments. So the reason that we co-allocate that personal advisor at 16, and actually where I'd like to get to, so I started in post in June in Herefordshire, is that we're allocating it 15 and 9 months. So when you look across some of our good and outstanding local authorities are aiming to allocate at 15 and 9 months, but we are managing 16 in Herefordshire. That is because the emphasis on that work starts in terms of the life skills, because, you know, we know that for some of our children at that transition point at 18, it is growing up fast in some instances. Where we can keep those children as they're turning into adults with their foster carers, we will. The supported living arrangements is the huge volume of work that's gone into that, so that the accommodation that's on offer, as was said, we're not just putting you in there, but you've got that wraparound support, is all around trying to mitigate some of those statistics for our young people. But there is an emphasis on that work. So children in care have what we call a child looked after review every 6 months. And as they're getting older, it will focus on that preparation. And as I say, and that's why we co-allocate early, because that real focus that the PA can give in terms of the skills you're going to need. And it's different for every young person, you can imagine. I've got 3 kids, it'd be different for all of them. But there is, I feel that I can reassure you that there is absolutely that focus. But, you know, as much as you can try and prepare, it's still tough.
Thank you, Tori. Can I just ask, it's all very good that we can bring that age forward, but do we have the PAs to cover that? It's a big ask when we've got quite a high level of that age group needing that support, and if you're bringing it down lower, then that workload for those PAs is going to be too much?
We are currently looking at a service redesign, and that is factored in. So there's going to be at least 4 new PAs that we have capacity for within the service. So it increases us just under a third in terms of what we got at the minute, because you're right, in terms of the age and demographics of our children in care population, we've got a big cohort who are 17 and coming up to 19. So yeah, we've preempted that, and we've got those positions that are going to be going into the care leavers team.
Thank you. Councillor Fagan, thank you very much for joining us. You've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for letting me sit on the committee remotely on behalf of the Children Young People Scrutiny Committee. I was just wondering, first of all, I had a question about if we're looking at the impact of what we're providing for young people. We need to really be able to hear properly what it is that they're telling us, and I'm just wondering, do we have the capacity to capture that? Are we getting the voice of young people who are being supported by this service across the county? I know it is one of the areas of the improvement plan that came about from the Ofsted inspection. And it is an area that the Children Young People Scrutiny Committee will be looking at, but it is a priority action. So I was just wondering what's happening about that.
Okay, so we've got a number of groups that we support young people to attend, and they're participation groups. And the participation lead, Chase Dowling, supports that alongside the PAs. And so young people have an opportunity to spend time with Chase to share views on all aspects of support that we offer as a care leavers service. We have the Inspire Change group, which is actually our Children in Care Council that has been developed, and their role is to spend time with our care experienced young people to gather views and to help feed those back up through corporate parenting. And what we want to do is, with the support of our care experienced apprentices, help make sure that we speak to a wider range of young people to understand the needs of young people of different ages with different particular needs. So we've done recently a piece of work with our separated young people around their experiences of our support and accommodation, and all of those young people were contacted. We received 18 responses to our questionnaire, and we supported them to be able to attend and fill that in with the support of interpreters, and Chase visited them in different places so that they could share their views. So we're really trying to take a very tenacious approach at supporting people in different ways to gather their views. It's something that we know we've needed to improve on, and we're on that journey, and we're hoping to have more young people be involved in sharing their experiences with the support of care experienced young people. I think that will make it easier for young people to share their views. We've also recently received feedback from the Bright Spots survey, and there was a particular survey for care experienced young people that was sent out, and we had a large take-up of young people completing that survey. So we've just received that feedback, and we're making sense of the information that they're sharing with us.
Okay, thank you. So, and I'm just curious also about the information then. I can see that, great steps are being taken to gather that information. And then I'm just wondering about, do we have the right mechanisms in place in the council and the kind of wider partnerships in the county to actually feed the information that we're getting into sort of priorities and the strategic development of policy across the county?
So my observations would be that we've got some real strengths in terms of participation, engaging with our children and young people, and feeding that in. I think where, as you say, it's one of our priorities in terms of that feedback mechanism that leads into information and data that we can pull and analyse. That's what we're currently working on. So, there are meetings set up, but I would say that isn't in place just yet, but needs to be in place very quickly. And we are working on that currently. And in terms of our children and young people actually actively influencing policy and procedure, I think again that's a next step for us, so that we're not just consulting with our children and young people, but they are actively participating with us and alongside us. And I think a really kind of positive first step in that is that our next corporate parenting board in October, we're going to have a young person's takeover. So I'm sure Ivan's looking forward to that. But yeah, so it's we've got our plans and our aspirations, participation, tick, feedback that we can pull, analyse, look at critically. We need to get there, and we need to get there quickly.
Thank you.
Would it be possible for myself just to add something, if that's okay? In terms of commissioning, I mentioned that we're about to recommission one of our supported accommodation contracts. We've actually got a co-production approach set up with young people to involve them in the full design of that service. So they're actively working with us on the specification, what they want to see from the service, the aims and objectives. They are developing tender evaluation questions and are going to be invited to sit on the actual evaluation panel when we evaluate the tenders when they come in. And we're also currently looking at how they would like to be involved in the ongoing review of services. We do annual reviews of our commission services, and we'd like to involve young people in that. So we've done some face-to-face sessions so far. We've got a survey out at the moment that's still live, which we're due to close next week, and we've got some actual co-production sessions booked in to further develop that work. So I just thought it would be helpful to include that at this juncture. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you. Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chair. I am conscious that committee members wanted to ask some questions, but I just wanted to respond to one particular element of Councillor Stark's point, if I may, and Councillor Stark mentioned the policy position. Tory has clearly given a very detailed answer with regard to elements of the Children Act 1989. But just in terms of, if you like, the start of that process, it might just be worth remembering that the point at which there may become a statutory intervention in a child and a family's life is where there is concern across the multi-agency partnership that a particular child or children may be suffering or likely to suffer significant harm. So it isn't so much a policy position, it is rooted in legislation, the statutory guidance which is Working Together 2023, and locally there are West Midlands regional procedures that guide all of our staff, not just children's services. So it isn't a policy position. But as Tory has rightly pointed out, we are on an improvement journey. It's been reflected in the commentary by feedback, and we know from some of our statistical information that we would say that the rate of our looked after children is higher than some of our statistical neighbours. We have to be really careful when we that isn't a binary, compare ourselves to a statistical neighbour, because each individual set of circumstances needs to be considered as an individual set of circumstances. So it isn't a policy position, it is a position that is guided by legislation and statutory guidance, and we work to that in Herefordshire. I use the expression significant harm. That is also defined in legislation, but it requires a degree of professional interpretation. And so working with our improvement partners in Leeds and implementing our family group conferencing, taking a restorative and a broader family approach to these matters ought to see us have a changing profile in how we identify risk in families and how we work to reduce that risk within families and broader family networks.
Can I just come back, Councillor Power? It's a related point. I know people have been very patient. What I was getting at was this balance between, as you say, the legislative requirements to safeguard the child and the recognition, as you've said, that by bringing a child into care, you could be harming their life's chances. That's why I said from cradle, obviously it's to 25. Are you confident, Councillor Powell, given some of the comments that have been made in council in the past about us taking on too many children, that we've got the balance right now, that you think we are obviously having to concentrate on safeguarding a child, but have we got it in mind as well about the downstream harm that could happen if that child ends up in our care up to a point when they become a care leaver? Are you happy we've got the balance right? Because people in the past have said we've taken in children too readily at times. That was the impression, whether that's right or not.
Just on a particular point, in terms of downstream harm to children in care, I think we just need to be clear that what we mean by that is we know, it's acknowledged that the outcomes for children who become care experienced aren't as good as for other children. So I think we need to be careful about the use of the word harm. So their outcomes often aren't where they need to be. But as corporate parents, we absolutely need to be aspirational for our children in care. Those were the points that were made by officers. We should have that ambition for them. We're all corporate parents. We should, if they want to go to university, we should have that ambition and share it for them. If they want to join a particular career, pursue a particular profession, we should have that ambition for them and support them to do that. And it's only a small part of it, but part of the work of the corporate parenting board is to develop the corporate ambassadors offer to support care experienced young people so that they can achieve either those lifelong career ambitions or indeed to pursue hobbies and interests. So one small point there. In terms of the balance, we know that one of the impacts of inadequate judgments is that the whole system does become more risk averse, and so we see a significant increase of referrals of matters that people are worried about, rather than necessarily professionals understanding what is known in Hereford as the Right Help, Right Time document, but in statutory guidance is the thresholds guidance. So referring professionals need to understand the level of risk that they're perceiving, what their particular responsibility may well be within their own workplace and their own organisational setting to offer early help to that child, that family, to make a referral for consideration of targeted early help, or indeed for it to be referred to the local authority front door to consider what the appropriate response is to the level of concern. Now, that level of concern may well be such that it is viewed as professionals as suffering or likely to suffer significant harm. As a consequence, there should be a Section 47 strategy discussion, which involves a range of professionals, but as an absolute minimum, a children's social care, a police and a health senior professional, and they should then decide two things. What are the immediate actions that we need to take now to reduce that level of significant harm? And at the same time, is there a need to instigate arrangements for child protection? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the child needs to become looked after, picking up on the point that Tori made, by engaging broader family in explaining what the perceived risk is and what the potential support to that child and family could be. Engaging the wider family in that discussion may well help that risk be managed and reduced and addressed within that family environment, rather than necessarily moving into a looked after arrangement. So that's the trajectory of improvement that we're on, because we know it's been reported by Ofsted that perhaps the balance previously has not been in that more measured way, if I can use that particular expression.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Tori?
I would just add to that as well that nobody can say for sure if it's a child's pre-care experience before they come into the care of the local authority, or their experience through their care journey. In terms of those poor outcomes, we're not in a position to say that, and we could probably say it's going to be a bit of both to different degrees for each individual. So I'll put that in there. But, you know, obviously our aim is to support and help and keep those children safe ultimately if that decision is made. but the number of children coming into care in Herefordshire month on month is reducing, so that gives us a positive indication in terms of what I've been saying around that correct threshold application.
Thank you, Tori, and I appreciate all your comments, but we're still trying to get onto the care leaver end of the service. Councillor Thomas, thank you for your patience.
Well, first of all, ladies, you four ladies, it's one of the best presentations that we've had. I've been quite a few different scrutiny committees, so it's well done to you. And I want to sort of go back. I'm looking at provision and personal advisor. And one thing when you were talking about personal advisors came to mind. The last bit here is advocacy. You didn't actually really mention that, and I'm a little bit, two things I'm slightly concerned at. First of all your personal advisors are employees of the council. That's where does policy and personal advice, you know, where's the division between that? That I find it slightly. And advocacy, I can't see how a personal advisor can be, and being a council employee can be an advocate. It doesn't sit well with me. I would have thought we need to have advocacy, which can be volunteers, doesn't have to cost, advocacy or advocates outside personal advisors. Because I think that the young people might be quite intimidated to talk to a personal advisor and complain when that person is an employee. I've got several questions, but I'll let you answer that one first.
So Councillor Thomas, are you suggesting there may be a conflict of interest?
I am, yes. In my head, I've got a very old head. I feel there is a conflict of interest there, and I think it should be really, a young person should really be able to talk to somebody who is independent.
It may be helpful if I come back on that. So part of the role of a personal advisor is to be an advocate for that young person, so that they're able to champion for that young person in terms of seeking support for them and helping them to navigate a pathway, maybe to get some support from health or another service locally. We have our own internal advocacy service for children. It's the Hear Me service. It's what the council offer, and that's independent to our personal advisors. So our young people can make complaints absolutely about their service if they're not happy about that, and we can signpost them to the Hear Me service, which is very, very positive and successful. My understanding from feedback from young people is they do find that service very, very helpful. So we do offer advocacy as part of that role of a PA, but I recognise what you're saying, and absolutely we do offer another service to help them when they need that support independently.
Second question I've got is, we had a meeting like this sometime, last year, and I am in contact with 2 foster carers. And I made a comment at the last meeting that the support for foster carers they consider to be poor. I wonder if you think that's improved.
So foster carers all have their own supervising social workers. So their social workers are separate to the child social worker. It's probably a question I need to take away and ask. I thought you were coming in there, no. My colleague in fostering has done a lot of work, I know, since her appointment in the role 10 months ago. But yeah, I'd need to come back to you on that. But they do have their own allocation. We call it a supervising social worker for foster carers. They will all have one of those. which, as I say, is separate to the child social worker. So, you know, there can't be that conflict there.
I'm saying that, I'm asking you that question because I actually have a cousin that is a foster carer, and she had problems with one of her foster children, and she was with Herefordshire Council, and nobody, she got hold of somebody on the phone, but nobody came to sort it out. That's the only reason I asked the question. So I do know that there was a problem, in one case anyway.
So sorry, Councillor Thomas. Is this a care leaver that you've got a concern about, or
It
not?
was a care leaver.
Okay,
He's
okay.
now
And
grown up.
Tory will get back
Yeah.
to us on that one.
The other question I want to ask is about apprenticeships. You've spoken and very good about trying to get many, because obviously as an employer, I've been trained 24 apprentices in my 30 years. I've taken some extremely troubled young men and turned them into real good workers, and some of those, and one in fact, turned out to be the best I've ever had. And if you can get them into training, my question really though is, when I was trained all these young men, the college wasn't very cooperative with us. They didn't provide the right courses. I had to send boys to Forest Dean. I had to send boys to Worcester. Is this still a problem?
It's not a problem so far, but we're looking at 4 currently. So at the minute, in terms of the sufficiency to keep those opportunities going, Stacey's got meetings coming up with some of our colleagues who have a lot to do with some of our big contracts to see if we can scope out that opportunity. It's not an issue we've come across so far, but as I say, numbers are still low at the minute, aren't they? So it's something for us to be alive to.
Thank you, Tory. I do think apprenticeships need to come back into the fore, don't they? Because, you know, apprenticeships in general have been lost throughout the last decade, I think. And I think we're doing well at Herefordshire Council with the apprenticeships that you've got going through the system. And also, it's a real good news story that so many have got into university that, you know, we've supported. So, you know, there's lots of good positive outcomes there. Thank you. Wendy.
Thank you. I just wanted to add on that note, when we go out to tender for commission services like the ones I've mentioned, we also have a social value element of those types of contracts. So we are working with young people around those social value commitments. One of those is provision of apprenticeships within organisations that we're actually commissioning out. So that's another avenue that we've got to enhance this offer for care leavers.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Councillor Toynbee, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thanks. I've just got a few questions. Yeah, thanks very much for the presentation. It's really good to see progress in a lot of areas that were direly in need of progress, like participation and apprenticeships, and that we're using the leverage in contracts and things like that. That's really good as well. Let's use the little power that we do have. I mean, I've just got a couple of questions. One is about accommodation. I think it's very good that we're actually, as a council, are investing in our own accommodation, like used to happen in the olden days. So I'm glad we're going back to that and owning our own assets on behalf of the local community. I've got a question about rent guarantees. So on page 70 of the pack, it says young people can be supported to access a rent guarantor scheme. So I'm not sure what that means. Are we, as a council, acting as rent guarantors for them?
I can come in on that. Yes, we are. And other local authorities offer that. So often when young people take up a tenancy, they can be asked for a guarantor. And when we haven't been offering that, that's been a real barrier for young people moving on into their own homes locally. Landlords are becoming more and more risk averse around renting out to young people. They might not want to say that officially, but we see that there is a real difficulty for young people accessing affordable accommodation. And so by building relationships with local estate agents and having the rent guarantor scheme, it means that young people can move on at the right time to their own property and are not getting stuck in some of our more expensive provision. So we're offering that, and I have supported with Tori to sign off one today for one of our young people who's been very, very successful and is a single parent, and she'll be moving into her own property, which we're really quite proud of. So we're increasing the numbers of young people we're supporting with that, and it's been very successful.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. That's really good news. Maybe that could be clearer, to us, because it's important that we know that, because it's so helpful to the young people. So it may be just me, but when it says they can be supported to access the scheme, we can say we are doing this.
Yeah, we are.
them.
Absolutely,
So,
we are
yeah.
doing this, yes.
Yeah. I've also got a question about educational support. So it's good to see about the bespoke mentoring scheme, and as we know, we've got a virtual school, and I think the virtual school does some really great work with the children and with the schools where the children are. And I think we're doing some really good stuff in Herefordshire on that. I'm quite surprised that it's compulsory to be in some kind of education and training till you're 18, but that's where we are with the law. So I suppose I'm wondering about educational support post 16 and post 18. I mean, it was great what you said about financial support and grants and things for university, but and training schemes and mentoring schemes. But I'm just wondering about, as far as the actual course content is concerned, if it's PAs or if we have people with an educational background giving the older care leavers support through their courses so they can minimise the risk of dropping out and do as well as they can. So like a virtual college as well as a virtual school.
PAs most definitely can support young people with their course content, and we do have staff with a very strong education background. I think if we spoke to those staff, they'd want to be able to do more, and we'd like to be able to offer more. Currently, we have fortnightly meetings with our education colleagues to actually look at these difficulties. So if we've got a young person we're quite worried about and they're at risk of falling out of college or not passing their course, we can look at that individual situation to come up with an action plan as to how we can support them and meet their individual needs. So it's not all about the PA having to come up with all of the ideas and look for the support locally. We're I would say a very wise group of people that come together that do blue light thinking, that think outside the box and try to overcome those challenges wherever possible. We would like to strengthen our offer in that area, and that's something that we're working on together as a group.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, sorry, Tori, I'm just going to look at the chair and say it sounds as though maybe there may be some more resources needed or in that area.
I would just add that education and training is part of the pathway plan, so there is a big focus, but also I talked about some of that resource and capacity needing to come over to the care leavers service with the extra posts that we've identified. What I'd like to do is look at one of those posts becoming a specialist education, employment and training officer. So like we've got the specialist housing, I'd like the same for education, employment and training. So I'm looking at one of those posts becoming that role.
Yeah, we can look at the recommendations at the end, if that's okay. Okay. Councillor Fagan, sorry to have kept you.
No, it's fine, thank you. And I can't see which other councillors want to ask questions. Just on that that issue of education, employment and training, I'm wondering with the we know that there's been an issue with care leavers actually the numbers being quite low in education, employment and training. So that bespoke mentoring package that's now in place, have we got any idea of what the impact of that has been? So that's my first question. And then the second question, I just wanted to ask about the 27% of placements that are out of the county. just a little bit of clarification about that. So are they actually out of the county by choice, or is that due to capacity issues? And of those, are a large percentage of those the unaccompanied asylum seekers? Is that because we haven't got the right sort of opportunities to provide for those young people?
Okay, so could you just repeat your first question, please?
It was about the bespoke mentoring. Have we got any idea about the impact of that service that is new? I assume that bespoke mentoring has sort of come about as a way of trying to deal with the low numbers of care leavers in employment, education and training. So do we know, has bespoke mentoring made an impact on those numbers?
Not yet. It's literally been only a few weeks for them being mobilised. So as part of the contract, we would be looking at impact, and we want to use an outcome star measure to support young people to see where it's helped them to improve their lives. We want young people to move into education, training and employment. So we are actively wanting to seek that feedback. I just think it's absolutely too early yet to say. With regards to our separated young people, they have in some instances been placed out of county because of their particular needs and the challenges of being able to provide them with educational opportunities in Herefordshire that they want. And my colleague in education is actively looking at how the colleges can support a roll-on, roll-off programme for ESOL, so that whenever they arrive in the UK and come to Hereford, that they can start in education quickly with not having to wait for term times. So that's something that's being developed. We know that other cities have those provisions in place because they've already got a proportion of young people needing that service. We just don't have the numbers in Herefordshire, but we're wanting to grow those numbers and grow a community. And we're working with young people around that. And some of the work we've done around their participation and voice is asking them those questions about what would have helped you to feel happy to come to Hereford and to live here and to have your education and training opportunities here. And they've been really willing to give that feedback. They've been visiting Hereford when we had a celebration event. They actually really liked it and felt that we were a very friendly community. So we're actively seeking that feedback and trying to support them to have the services where they are, but grow our own here as well at the same time.
Thank you, Stacey. And I think you've demonstrated a lot about the voice of the children being heard, and you've shown so many ways that you've done it. You know, one of the ones I was thinking about was when you said about a child wanted a big TV, and that just shows that they need that support because their need is a want rather than a need, and it's those life learning skills that they need guidance and support with. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. Looking at some of the current data on care leavers, 10% have a disability. I'd like to dig into that a little bit more. Is that disability something that's going to be dealt with, potentially supported through their ongoing transition from leaving care or and going into adulthood? Or is it going to be something that's going to remain with them? Is it a disability that can be treated or not? You know, that's my question.
Absolutely, they would be supported with their disability through their journey in care. We have young people who experience periods of poor mental health, and so our aspiration is that they were able to recover and maintain positive emotional well-being, and we have young people where they've had a particular crisis, access support, we've supported them through that journey and then have come out the other side. One particular young person is now ready to go into college, and that's amazing to think of where she was when she was 15 to how she is now 19. And we have another young person who was sadly detained under the Mental Health Act, but is now living alone in her own home and has had fantastic support from adult social care and mental health services. So some of those young people won't have enduring disabilities, but might have them for a period of time. But we walk alongside young people and we make sure we've got the services around them that they need to support them with their health, or whether that's adjustments for them to be able to go into employment. We will do as much as possible to make sure that they can reach their aspirations.
Thank you. Councillor Stark?
Can I stay with this feedback loop? And Councillor Powell, I will use outcomes, because I know harm as a specific legislative definition, as it does in planning as well. This feedback loop, because I'm going back to how we prepared the looked after children to become care leavers. When we are interacting with care leavers, are we using their experiences, good or bad, to actually tailor what personal advisors might be providing for the looked after children that are coming up to become care leavers? Is there a feedback loop there? I mean, I know you've talked about what personal advisors will try and do for the individual child. You have talked about bespoke mentoring, you've talked about care leavers mentoring, but I just wondered whether we took our experience of our care leavers and used it to design the way that personal advisors would intervene with the children that are looked after at the moment.
Absolutely. So during Care Leavers Week, I've worked with young people where they've actually wanted to talk about what makes a good personal advisor, and what they would like to see in a good social worker. And then we use that within our recruitment campaign when we're interviewing candidates for roles. And it's also about taking learning back to the team. So if we have a young person where they've made a particular complaint or they've wanted to give us feedback, in a confidential way, we would go back to the team to help them with their practice and learning so that they can then think differently about how to approach a situation maybe in the future that a young person hasn't valued, but maybe a different young person has found that approach helpful. We really want to make sure that we support young people in the way that they need as individuals.
Is that done in a systematic way?
Could you expand on that, please, what you mean?
Well, I was thinking that some of the authorities in the appendices actually provide bespoke training for the looked after children to prepare them for leaving care. Whether you call it a care leavers course or care leavers.
Do you mean an independent living skills course?
Well, I don't know, have we got one here as well? Yes.
Okay, so we've got a variety of toolkits that we use to help us to sort of check out with a young person what skills they've already got when they come into being 16. So it might be that you've got young people who are really good at managing their pocket money and they've been used to getting involved in baking and cooking. And then you've got another young person who might have been quite poorly and they might not have had that capacity to learn those skills yet. So we have tools that we use with each carer and young person to help benchmark where they're at, and then that helps guide us in terms of making the steps for helping them to prepare. So examples can be around, do they have a bank account? Okay, how do they use it? And then they'll have a plan of work to help them to develop some budgeting skills. It might be that they need to learn about understanding what a tenancy is and how you become tenancy ready. So do you understand that you would need to keep the home in good order? You need to be making sure you're making your payments for your rent. There's skills around washing your clothes and going shopping. All of those skills need to be acquired to a degree as each young person progresses, but their pathway plan helps to work out what things they need to do first, so prioritising those steps towards independence.
So you're doing it specifically to the child?
Yes.
Do you see any value through a recommendation from us for some sort of general course in terms of life skills? Because we were talking about children in care don't necessarily experience everything, that a child not in care might. I'm just trying to explore whether a recommendation along those lines, because I do notice other authorities do have that sort of general training in place, and it seemed to me quite an attractive proposition.
I don't know whether Tori wants to come in and answer that question.
It's I would say that what's needed for our children, young people can be quite individual, and it's not just like there's a bit of a focus on the role of the PA, but actually it starts much earlier with their carers. So our children in care from a young age, you know, there's bits that we start to do towards their independence and living skills, budgeting with their pocket money, cooking their own tea. It just comes more sharply into focus, I think, when they're co-allocated a PA, because, you know, you're really starting to knuckle down then. But I would just add that in, that it actually starts much earlier, and we've got our independent reviewing officers at those 6 monthly meetings who are also, you know, making sure that our children, young people are having that support. In terms of a recommendation, I think there could be a loose recommendation maybe for us to go and look at what other local authorities are doing. You know, I'd be happy with that suggestion to take that away. But I think that it can be quite individual to the child and young person.
So just to look at other authorities,
We'll have a look
how
and
they're
see what's
preparing their children
yeah,
for
and if there's best
leaving care.
practice that we can steal, we
Yeah,
will.
okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, Tori. Councillor Fagan.
Thank you. Just in terms of the support for care leavers, and I can see that there's quite a lot of practical support. I'm just wondering in terms of the sort of emotional support and relationship advice. So I can see also that there seems to be quite a lot of sexual health advice, but given that breakdown in relationships is one of the reasons why children end up in the care system, and then they've become young adults possibly without a really good foundation in sort of relationships. Is there any support that the PAs give them, or who do they turn to about things like toxic relationships, or is is this something that they just end up having to learn themselves? And I think that the numbers of sort of care leavers who become sort of pregnant quite quickly or parents quite quickly is sort of concern. So I'm just wondering what's been done to help them tackle those sorts of navigate those sorts of issues through their young adulthood.
So our PAs absolutely support young people around relationship challenges, whether that's with their immediate carers or whether that's in friendships or partners. We would utilise universal services for young people. So if they needed support from RASAC or Women's Aid, that's something that we would do. For young men, we would look at what services are available for them more nationally and locally. We would want young people to have really positive role models in relationships. So we would look at what services we've got available. And if there were young people who would benefit from being together in a group for some peer support, that's something that we can facilitate. We've got staff who've previously been supported to do training around domestic abuse. And I mean, sadly, one of our workers has moved on, but actually had previously worked for Women's Aid and was a young person's worker. So we try to recruit staff who can provide those supports to young people, because what we know is our care experience young people don't always want to meet lots of different people to share their story, and actually their PA is somebody who they can trust. So we need to be able to offer that, but also support them to be able to accept universal services when we're not here. We don't want to create a very heavy dependency, because young people do need to be able to access services later on in life, but we absolutely do support around relationships.
Thank you, Stacey. Councillor Davis, I think you wanted to come back with something.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to mention or investigate predominantly also we're talking about care leavers and young people that are approaching independence potentially with all the aspects, and everything you've covered has been very positive and really well thought out. And I'm just wondering, are these services going to be available, bearing in mind that this committee is a healthcare and wellbeing committee, for other people who aren't targeted as care leavers, but for argument's sake, other vulnerable, not vulnerable adults, but people who are 18, 19, 20 years of age and maybe going through life and would require or benefit from this kind of support? So is there any aspiration to sort of spread this out at all?
We don't cover children who have children or young people who haven't been in care, so we have that very specific focus on children who've been through care and now are care leavers. We're heavily involved with other agencies in collaboration with lots of different organisations where their services are like universal, as Stacey said, so open to anybody. But for us within the care leavers service, we've just got that specific focus.
Sorry, I hope I didn't muddy the waters at all there. With
No, don't worry.
The percentages.
Thank you very much, Councillor Davis. Okay, I've got one more question and then we'll pass. Oh, we've got Tony and Louis, and then I've got one more before we go to Councillor Gandhi to see if she wants to add anything. Tony.
Thank you, Chair. It's just one question about, given that we've had so much focus from Ofsted, are we, have we kind of audited the support for care leavers? Do we sort of anticipate that if Ofsted came back and looked specifically at care leavers, that we have actually improved the service? What do we think that they're going to say, and what are the areas that we think that we need to actually really focus on, apart from the whole issue of voice? Because I know that we've talked about that. But how well prepared are we for a sort of an Ofsted inspection on our support for care leavers?
I think that we're in a good position with our early allocation of our PAs. You've said that in terms of voice and participation, we've got some really good evidence there, and our children in care councils as well support that. I think that we have got clear policies and guidance in place for our practitioners and workers. I think there needs to be, in terms of a focus and continued focus on that education, employment and training. We just need to keep pushing that for our care leavers, but also some of our housing options that we've highlighted today. We've made huge progress in that area. So, I think we're in a good position to welcome Ofsted back, to look at our services. But in terms of, if I'd give you that area that we need to continue addressing, it's definitely that education, employment and training, which is why I want to look at that bespoke role with some of that capacity that's coming over to the service.
Thank you. Councillor Stark.
Yeah, I just want to touch briefly on capacity. We talked before, Councillor Powell, about the practice of bringing children into care, and that has left us with a legacy of quite a number of children that will be becoming care leavers in the near future. Are you confident as a council that we are prepared for that? Because it seems to me that is going to be quite a challenge for us over the next couple of years.
I do think that I answered this question earlier, but I don't mind repeating that we have preempted that because we've got a lot of children who are 17 coming up to 18. So we're going to get at least 4 new posts in the care leaver service. So we've crunched the numbers, done the figures, and that's what it's looking like. But because I'm over the children in care service and the care leavers, I've got that flexibility, if that makes sense. So, yeah, we've preempted that.
I just wanted to confirm that. I mean, that was one of the concerns I had. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again, Tori. Just finally from me, it's really a question or comment to Hayley regarding the provision of accommodation and the prevention of homelessness. Yeah, we've got the many slides on the presentation to say what the local authorities' legislative duties are, and we know those are paramount. But can you assure us that the young person's voice is heard in terms of a safe and sound place to live? You also mentioned that you're looking outside of Hereford City now, so Ross was mentioned. And that was my second point. Is this accommodation location planned in respect of access to schools, education, employment, etc.?
I've got an extra bit to add on as well. I would say yes. If I start off with the accommodation and location, so we don't just want to find accommodation that is cheap or easy for us as a local authority. Everything we do is needs-based. So we understand what the needs data tells us, and then we find the solution for it. So I know, Ross, on why you might not think that there's transport links there, but it's got lots of other services there that would help us.
Be careful, we got Ross on Y here.
Amazing transport links. But we know from the needs data that we actually need accommodation there. So it's a market town. There are all the other services there. So we can't have 100% of everything. Transport links is the issue in this one. But we always go where we know that there are going to be the services or the support or the accommodation, because some people can't live in Hereford City. Their issues around them doesn't allow them, and it's better for them to move away into accommodation, away from the groups that they've been hanging around with, or sometimes they just need a fresh start in a new location. So everything we do is needs based. And the voice around the young person, so I think that's partly me and you. So the accommodation that we do in strategic housing it's not commissioned. So Wendy does the support services around those, but the accommodation that we deliver, I think we always look at it from our point of view, our children, what would we want in there? So we deliver it to a standard that we would want our families to live in, and that's the feedback that we've been receiving. We've got the luxury, because we're not a housing association, we don't have to churn out lots of units to a certain standard. We churn out the units to our standard, so that means that they're painted better, they're painted brighter, they're designed for the individuals. So I would say, from my point of view, I think their voice is heard. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, just thank you for adding me on. I think, when we look at accommodation, as Hayley said, we very much look at, is it good enough for our child? So we make sure that they're bright spaces, that young people are involved in decisions around that accommodation, in terms of, the furniture, the colours, the opportunity, the garden, for example. And I think it's also worth mentioning that, obviously it's in the slide pack, but the supported accommodation regulations came into force last year. So all of our local providers have, we've got 4 local providers, 3 are fully registered and one's got an application pending. So we're in a really good position to make sure that it is really, really good quality accommodation and support that our young people are accessing, because Ofsted will now be overseeing that provision, doing regular inspections, etc. And obviously we do regular contract monitoring. We're regular visitors to that service, both in formal meetings to manage the contract and informal settings. So we'll go along to events that young people are at, so we can talk to them in an informal way, so young people can actually talk to commissioners as well around their service and their views and thoughts, and we can use that in terms of our management of those contracts and providers.
Thank you, Wendy. I think these sessions are really important, because we get that, that extra narrative in these discussions, and it puts things into a much better context than looking at slides that you can't include every little bit on. Hayley, you wanted to come back?
Yes, please, Councillor Crockett. So it's in relation to you when you were asking, were we ready for Ofsted? So last week we had a visit from the Department of Education and DLUC, as they were. So we've It was a whole day's presentation. They came, they visited our supported accommodation, they talked to our young individuals. All of us were on the panel. So we had a big presentation and we've delivered all of this accommodation. We haven't had the final report, but feedback on the day was good. It was really good. We've improved. They can see improvement. We're on the right trajectory. Our vision is right. So just wanted to let you know that as well.
It's always good to end on a high, isn't it? And then we'll go to Councillor Gandy. Did you want to add anything? Thank you very much. So the absolute final word. Oh, before we go to Councillor Powell, Councillor
Sorry,
Fagan.
Chair, can I just say that Councillor Gandhi, for some reason, her speaker, it wasn't coming through at all. So I'm just wondering if for the recording as well, that it won't be heard on the recording. I just wanted to point it out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fagan. Okay, we'll sort that one out. And the final word to Councillor Powell, and thank you very much for coming at that late notice. I'm sorry that we didn't get your invitation out there earlier.
No problem. Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of quick points, if I could. Just to make it, it's been hinted at, but I want to make it crystal clear that within the refreshed, revised and approved improvement plan, there is a very clear focus on Ofsted recommendation 1, which deals with corporate responsibility, care leavers and all of that. So it's absolutely crystal clear in the improvement plan. And the director has set out the activity that needs to take place, who is responsible for it and on what timescales. And I think it's important to reflect that some of that responsibility also sits with the Safeguarding Children Partnership, because it reflects the multi-agency approach that's needed to deliver the improvements. That's the one point I'd make. And the final point I'd make is within this, the role of the Corporate Parenting Board. So we are all corporate parents, all of the political groups and also Councillor Kenyon are represented on the Corporate Parenting Board. So there is opportunity through your individual members of that board to ask these kind of questions and to actively support the endeavours of the Corporate Parenting Board. And I'm sorry, I think it was Stacey who mentioned it, but I very much welcome the opportunity that presents itself on the 23rd of October, which is where our young people will, in effect, take over and chair the board. So we're working hard to make sure we make the best of that opportunity, not only on the 23rd of October, but throughout the year.
That would be an amazing kick-off, I think, in October, and we look forward to hearing about it. Okay, so I think we've exhausted all the questions. Now, can I come to you, Daniel, please, as Scrutiny Officer, to tell us if you've captured the recommendations, please?
Yes, I have, Chair. Just give me a moment to log into the meeting and I'll put them on the screen for you.
Thank you.
No.
No, we're okay to go. We're just bringing up those recommendations now.
I've captured the following 3 recommendations, which I will read out for the purposes of those online. 1, that Herefordshire Council should allocate a personal advisor to each looked after child in sufficient time to ensure that looked after children are prepared for independence through a well-designed and child-centred pathway plan. 2, to look at best practice in other local authorities when providing life skills and other personal development training to care leavers. And 3, to explore ways to provide capacity to increase opportunities for further and higher education for care leavers.
Thank you. I just wondered, Daniel, whether we could add the recommendation that I suggested at the beginning of this meeting, that this scrutiny committee join forces with the Children and Young People Scrutiny to continue and expand on any areas of supporting our looked after children.
I would suggest that's an action for the committee to just carry out and wouldn't form a recommendation. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen, it just doesn't strike me as a recommendation.
Okay.
Can we get that recorded in the minutes, though? Thanks.
Councillor Fagan.
Chair, is it possible that in to explore ways to provide capacity to increase opportunities for further higher education for care leavers, that we include in that employment, education and training, if we just say the EET, because I know that that is, you know, what the officers are saying that they want to do anyway, but it's not just further and higher education.
I think Councillor Toynbee just seconded that one, but we'll get Daniel to add that on. Tony, yeah. Tory, Tony.
I think we could be more specific in the first recommendation to make it more of a smart action in terms of no later than their 16th birthday.
Councillor Stark's just asking if that's a bit too late. And I see Councillor Fagan wants to come back in as well.
We're required to by 18. So 16, I think, should be what we're saying no later than, and where I'd like to get to is 15 and 9 months.
But I understood in the papers some children do decide to become independent at 16. Does that happen in this authority? No.
Yeah,
Not in this one.
I think that was other authorities.
Other
but,
authorities.
Yeah,
okay.
but
All right.
not here. And I suppose that we would revisit that if we needed to.
All right, okay.
Councillor Fagan, did you want to add something else?
Just, I realise I am a visitor to this committee, but I just thought that perhaps we could request that we ensure that the council provides a feedback mechanism so that care leavers can influence policy and procedures.
Could you read that out again slowly so I can type it out, please?
Sorry, that the executive ensure that feedback mechanisms are in place to ensure care leavers influence policy and procedure within the council.
Yeah, I need that slowly.
Sorry, okay. That the executive
Yep.
ensure that there are feedback mechanisms
Yes.
within the council
Yes.
to ensure care leavers can influence policy and procedure.
It's that executive ensure.
Yeah, it's fine. I just, I'm just going to, bear with me.
Councillor Toynbee.
It's another tweak, sorry. Yeah, I'll just let Daniel finish.
Okay, I'm finished.
Okay, so in the one about EET, you know, opportunities are sort of out with our control in a way. They're sort of out there in the world, aren't they? So I'm just wondering if we can put to support care leavers in education, employment and training, because that's what we can do. And it's about, you know, a sort of bespoke role was mentioned earlier, I think, so.
Yes, I know.
Does that make sense?
To explore ways to provide capacity to support care leavers.
Yeah, in education, employment and training. So
To enter.
it's to have that role to support them. In the way that the virtual school supports
Such as that.
children in care in education. Are you happy with that?
But the first one now is.
I would just put in instead of to take up.
The first one.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I. If that's okay, if other people think that's okay.
So do you need to go back to number 1 now?
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I'm just going to read these out again then. Okay. The committee is putting forward 4 recommendations. 1, to allocate a personal advisor to each looked after child by their 16th birthday to ensure that looked after children are prepared for independence through a well-designed and child-centred pathway plan. 2, to look at best practice in other local authorities when providing life skills and other personal development training to care leavers. 3, to explore ways to provide capacity to support care leavers in education, employment and training. And 4, to ensure that feedback mechanisms within the council to ensure care leavers can influence policy and procedure.
Everyone happy with that?
Yeah, I'll just if you're happy for me to just amend the syntax slightly to make them a bit more clearer, that's fine.
Yeah, so sorry. Can I have a proposer and seconder for these? There you go. For those recommendations. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Okay, that leaves that item off the agenda. Thank you very much, ladies, for your attendance. And if you want to go, that's absolutely fine. And again, a big thank you to Councillor Powell for stepping in at that last moment.
Thanks,
it is appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so item 8 on the agenda is building strong connected communities. The Talk Community Strategy 2024 to 2027. As noted in the agenda supplement, the purpose of bringing Talk Community back to scrutiny is to consider and comment on the refresh strategy. This item first came to our committee in January 24, and our recommendations are noted in Appendix B. So we'll hand over now to Leslie. Thank you very much. And I'm sure Hilary will probably want to input as well at some point.
Thank you, councillors. As you'll be aware, the work to develop the strategy started in November 2023. We developed the strategy through we started Review Talk Community with the aim of developing a strategy through a wide programme of stakeholder engagement. Series of workshops were held with voluntary sector partners, volunteers, health partners, other parts of the council, councillors yourselves. In fact, some of the members of this committee joined some of those sessions. We also explored the policy and strategy framework within which Talk Community needs to operate, and that's an attachment, an appendix to the strategy itself. And we also held a collaborative workshop, again to which a number of councillors who were here today joined, with partners, health partners and voluntary sector partners, to develop a vision collaboratively. And then in June we provided a briefing, an all-member briefing, 2 all-member briefings on the findings of the review and the direction of travel for the strategy. The findings of the review were that there was some fairly positive things to say about the work of Talk Community, but the review concluded that the lack of outcome measures had made it difficult for us to measure impact. There is actually quite a lot of data, there's quite a lot of numbers and quite a lot of case studies, but they're not directly related to the aspirations the council set out for Talk Community when it was set up. And that there was a real absence of a strategic framework which was shared and understood by all stakeholders, and that there was some issues around communication which had been identified by the Scrutiny Committee in January, and particularly a lack of understanding that Talk Community is about more than just the hubs. So today you have the draft strategy. You've also got the executive response to the recommendations that you made in January, but I think you'll find that I've addressed them in the strategy. I hope you'll find I've addressed them in the strategy as well. One of the early actions in the strategy is to address the issue of communications, and that is to be done fairly soon. So I leave it to you, councillors. I'm happy to answer any questions. It's quite a light touch document, because we were quite keen that it was a document that set the groundwork for the future, rather than was a massive document that just sat on a shelf. So yeah.
Thank you, Leslie. Hilary, did you want to say anything now, or do you want to say something a bit later once you've heard the debate discussion? Okay, so well, I've started basically on the delivery of 2024 to 25 and the implemented Talk Community communication strategy. So I'm a bit confused as who's doing this and how its effectiveness will be measured. And will this be included in the upcoming parish summit?
Oh.
Sorry, Chair. Could you just tell me where you're? Oh, right. Okay.
So it's repeated. It's repeated on our agenda supplement on page 5, and then in the slides that Leslie's provided as well. So it's the delivery in 2024 to 25. Can you see it on page 5?
Sorry, I can. I apologise.
So, yeah, basically, yeah, thank you, Louis.
So in terms of the communication strategy, that's something that we will be pulling together. So Emily's on the screen as the operational lead for Talk Community. She'll be leading on that work, and we'll be doing it in partnership with stakeholders. So we're really clear what Talk Community does, what it doesn't do, and how partners work together within that Talk Community. I think what's really clear from the review findings is that we don't have that outcome framework that really, we have a lot of data, but we don't necessarily have the intelligence that really enables us to look at the impact of Talk Community. And I think we need to apply the same methodology for that to the communication strategy. So to respond to your bit about how will we know it's working, I think within that communication strategy we need to have some clear metrics that will enable us, well, potentially through you as a scrutiny committee, to hold us to account for that.
Yeah, I think it was a bit confusing. Well, it was to me anyway. And welcome, Emily. It's nice to see you. I didn't know where Emily had gone, because if you tried to contact her, there was a different different email address, and I'm like, so where's she gone now? And then there's also been changes in the service lead, and I think she's now left the in the. No.
Would it help if I kind of gave a bit of clarity around that? So Emily is currently on a secondment in Children's Services, but is returning. Sorry, you can hear me. She's currently on a on secondment into Children's Services, but will be returning very soon. She returns to the role of leading Talk Community. The Talk Community function still remains within the Community Wellbeing Directorate. Councillor Gandhi is still the portfolio holder for Talk Community. The line management of Talk Community under Emily sits with Emily, and Emily's reporting to our Director of Public Health. That's Kate Carmichael is our interim. So it's still within Community Wellbeing Directorate. Really clear it's still within the Directorate. It's just moved divisions, if you like, within the Directorate. But Emily and the team, there's been no change to the work of the team. The team is still delivering what it's doing, and obviously the revised strategy will shape even more the work going forward. Hope that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you. I was just thinking back to sessions that I've been involved in over the years with Talk Community, and the many partners felt that Talk Community should have grown and expanded and not just be focused on health outcomes. Yet this is now being transferred to public health. So I'm a bit confused with that.
I think we've got to be clear about public health isn't just about health outcomes. It has that wider remit around health and well-being. And I think that's where Talk Community very much comes into play. I think what we see in one of the major thrusts of public health is around that all-age prevention strategy. We talk about prevention a lot. That's a key thing we should be doing in the local authority. And for me, the work of Talk Community, working with our communities, is a key driver in that prevention strategy and that prevention work that public health oversees more generally. Kate has got her hand up, so she may well be able to respond more to that for you.
Thank you. Thanks, Kate.
Yeah, I just thought, I mean, because I think in public health, we're amazingly excited that Talk Community is coming to us, because we feel it's such a good fit. I mean, it fits in the ethos of public health, which is about keeping people healthy and well, that kind of working upstream, that prevention, but also strengthening early help. So actually we don't find people ending up in crisis. And so I think what we're doing here is actually bringing that together. I think also it helps us in our duty to try to not just manage demand, but manage need. And actually, Talk Community are a group of people that can walk beside people to actually get those ideas early and then bring it back. And I think also within us, I think working within public health, it will kind of increase Talk Community's links, because people have said in the strategy they didn't understand it, they didn't see the potential of Talk Community, and I think to me it's so obvious, it's so good, but it will create its links to other prevention strategies. So it will sit in the team, and we have other people doing prevention, so it will link that up, and that's going to be really exciting. But also it will actually expand our boundaries outwards, and working with people like the ICB, and we have a group that actually looks at that wider prevention across the whole system as well. So I think Talk Community and Emily is going to be a wonderful addition to that. And it's already doing a lot of work, and I think it also adds things around health inequalities, which is a big driver in public health. We want to reduce those inequalities so that people all have the best experience in life, the best life they can possibly live. And I think some of that is really exciting. And again, we can get people. We've got a health inequality strategy, which I think they're going to really help us with. And also we can get them in much more into things like PCNs around in the primary care networks, because again, that's some of the groundwork we can actually link them up with, because we're already doing some of the work with that. So, I mean, I think it's a really good fit. We're not just health people. We do work in that kind of broad and upstream way to try to stop people becoming ill and keep people healthy, really. And that's part of our role. So I hope that helps, Chair.
Thank you, Kate. I'm just wondering whether we should be considering this approach across the whole council. You mentioned in this strategy that it's just early prevention that should be expanded, but I think, you know, as a council in itself, we should be looking bigger.
Oh, without a doubt. And I don't see talk communities just in that early help space. I think what we've seen and what Emily and her team have done have supported all council services to engage with communities across a wide breadth of different issues. So they've been involved in the Economy and Environment Directorate, for example, in some of the work they've done and needed to engage with communities. So I really don't see talk community as, I'm not about pigeonholing them into a particular way, and they certainly are a resource for the entire council, and we would expect them to be, you know, I would be encourage them in the way that I would across all my services to be playing that broader role.
Thank you. And for somebody who's been talking about talk community since its conception, I'm like still trying to understand how people don't get it sometimes. So I think we just keep chipping away. Councillor Thomas put his hand up, and then Councillor Stark.
I'm all for this talk community, but my ward is south of the county, Wimside ward. We haven't got one single hub. So over the last months, I've spoken to all my parish councils. Why are you not interested in it? And last night was Kingston. So I had quite, afterwards, after the meeting, I had quite a long talk to the chairman and the clerk and one other lady. And basically, they're not really interested because they have a coffee morning once a month in the church and in the hall where you get, so it's the same sort of thing. And the other lady said to me, yes, but you've got to remember, we are a rural community. We do look after our own. We don't, and they were a very good thing. And most of my wards, they do look after the local people. So I think probably this needs to be sold in a slightly different way, because it's ideal for cities, towns, but because a lot of people moved in over the years over the towns, they don't have a community spirit like we do in the countryside. So I think if we're going to get this out into the countryside, we do really need to sell it slightly different, I think.
Perhaps and I think that's been a key feature of the review findings, that talk community is not just about having a hub. So absolutely, there will be, I know Councillor Gandhi will say she's got a good neighbour scheme in her village, the coffee mornings, etc. No one is about imposing a talk community hub. I think the other part, and the really strong part of talk community, is the development officers. So put aside the hubs for the minute and talk about the development officers. As a development officer for each area of the, you know, for areas of the county, their role is to work alongside communities, alongside existing facilities that are in communities, to really understand what's working in communities and to be able to share that best practice and understand what the strengths are in different communities. And that, for me, back to your question, Chair, about communication strategy, is the really key part of the communication strategy that we need to nail, that it isn't just about the hubs. We've got slightly focused, I think, to the detriment of just thinking that talk community equals hubs. It doesn't. The work of the development officers is the bit that's really driving a different, should be about driving a different approach, working alongside those communities so that it responds whether it's rural, urban or a mix. It doesn't matter. It is about that development work. Sorry, that was a very long answer to, sorry.
Councillor Gandhi.
Yeah,
I mean, having a talk community hub in a parish is not a compulsory thing. We have 77 at the moment, and as you will see from the papers, they are all in different forms. Some are just signposting places, some provide basic coffee mornings, etc., and open perhaps once a month or something like that, and others are very, very active. As Hilary said, in my own village, we do not have a talk community hub. We have a village hall that puts on lots of activities, and we have a good neighbour scheme which operates with people phoning in who want prescriptions collected, taken to hospitals, etc., etc. But there are talk community hubs in rural areas. So Yarpole, which is in the north of Herefordshire, used to have a good neighbour scheme, and then they also had alongside that a community shop, etc. And they've now combined to have a hub. In Lentwoodine, which is in my ward, we have a community library, and operating out of that is a talk community hub. It is only a signposting hub. It's big, it's very small, but it does the job. And so this is what the idea about this is. Different, you know, we don't want to impose on any particular parish or village what they should be doing in helping to support the people within their village. They probably know what works for them. What we want to be able to do is to make it clearer, probably more so to those outside of the talk community hubs about what talk community is all about, what we do. So one of the things that recently I picked up on was the fact that some of the domiciliary carers that go into people's homes, they do not know or get a lot of information and communication about talk community. Now, if they did, they could pass that on to their clients who might be able to take advantage of some of the things that talk community does in their area. So that's where we want to improve the communication side of it. We don't want it to be something which is just an email, a newsletter that goes to ward members, to parish councillors who sometimes do nothing with it. We want to get it out into the further community, and that's the idea of this.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Gandhi. And it really takes me back to, you know, looking at this, the paper suggests that talk community has been focused on hubs, and I, for one, have been championing a broader aspect for talk community. So I just wonder where we could find the full breadth of talk community, because I can't see it in this document here. We don't want it just to be a hub. We don't want a list of hubs. We know all that, and we've got that here. But we needed that to be expanded to the bigger picture.
I think we included the map of the hubs. Yeah. So people could see where the hubs were. The risk of going back on what I've just said. But anyway, because the hubs are still an integral part of talk community, so it's important that people see the map and they see where the hubs are. If you
But the trouble with that, sorry, Hilary, the trouble with that is people focus then on hubs and not the bigger picture. And I think we've got to try and encourage that.
Page
13.
13.
Yeah.
Page 13.
I think we've tried in the strategy not to just focus on hubs. I think because that appendix was a separate appendix, it probably draws the eye to it more. I think it's, in terms of the actual strategy, I think it does describe that wider view of what talk community is and what it does. And maybe that's what we should be putting on the posters and all the rest of it as part of the comm strategy. We haven't got the comm strategy right. I think the strategy is balanced. If there are ways in which this committee feels that we should improve that, very, very happy to hear that.
The page that you... And talk community is... Community hub network is part of that wheel coming out from talk community as opposed to a hub. So you've got community brokers, early intervention and prevention, funding and capacity, health style programs, community development, facility engagement. So it's just part of a wheel. But what we don't want to do, and I don't think anybody in this room would want to do either, is we don't want to go to somewhere where they've got a Talk Community Hub and say, we're going to debadge you. You are no longer going to be a Talk Community Hub, and we don't, if you want to carry on doing what you're doing, you do it on your own because we're not involved. So the ones that exist at this present moment in time will continue. Some may fall by the wayside, but they will continue. There's nothing we can do about that. And particularly in the rural areas, the signposting that some of those small hubs will give is actually very, very important. But I think that particular diagram demonstrates exactly that they are just a spoke in the wheel of a talk community project across the whole county.
Thank you, Councillor Gandy. Louis, you first and then Tony.
I've got a couple of points. One's an observation and one's a point about the delivery plan on page 5. In Ross, we have a community development trust. That's basically a talk community, let's be honest about it. And it works well. It goes back to Councillor Thomas's view about what can you do in a rural area, which towns can do because they're more concentrated. In towns, we have the ability, as you say, to create a network that allows us to support organisations within Ross to actually get access to things like funding, DBS, other things. We also help with mental health and everything else. So Ross CDT is basically a mini talk community, and I know Malvin's looking at it. And my first observation before I go on to Pacific Point is I think talk community could benefit from looking at what we've done with Ross CDT and maybe encouraging that model to be rolled out where it is appropriate across the county, because I do think that has actually helped to focus the sorts of services you're trying to bring into communities, the sort of resilience you're trying to apply to communities, the self-supporting philosophy. I think looking at that would actually be another part of the ability for talk community to actually become more successful in getting communities to actually support themselves. That's something I would actually just make as an observation, Hilary.
And if I could just respond to that and say the Talk Community Development Officer that covers Ross works very closely with the Ross CDT. So actually that opportunity to roll that out as best practice is something that we're actively looking at. So I just want to give you
Would you like that as a recommendation from the committee?
Certainly if we wanted to look at different models.
I don't want to be biased.
Oh, surely not.
No, I think Ross is the best. I think Ross is the best place in the county, but then everybody else would say the same. My second point is about Councillor Thomas's point, which worries me. In the delivery plan, you've got, as the third bullet point, to develop an outcomes and evaluation framework. Here. But we keep hearing about all these inequalities in terms of access to service, in terms of access to particularly the health services caused by people living in rural, isolated communities. Surely we should be maybe prioritising talk community in a way where rather than just having an equal approach across the whole county, we should maybe focus more on the rural areas and use that outcomes and evaluation framework to drive that focus, because I think from what Councillor Thomas is saying is that there's a need out there not being met. I feel that because we keep getting these concerns voiced by the Rural Services Network, particularly about the inequality of access. And I think that's an area that talk community could very well focus on in terms of trying to help.
I wouldn't disagree with you, and I think the point that Kate made about the public health looking at health inequalities and how talk community can help support that. I don't think any of us have ever said we want a vanilla, everybody's the same across the piece, and there will be particular areas where we would want to focus and drive perhaps a different approach, or put more, look at more resource, or recognise that inequality of access. So I think all of that is in the mix, and I think the outcomes framework, which will be an interesting beast to try and get on top of, will need to recognise that it won't be one size fits all, and it will have to take account of there will be differing needs across the whole county. But I think one of the roles we have as a council in putting money into Talk Community is to ensure that we are addressing those inequalities in access through the work that we're doing through Talk Community. So I think there are two parts to the outcomes framework, one of which is to look at the effectiveness of Talk Community. The other is evaluating the effectiveness in terms of those addressing those health inequalities.
Could I just something on the rural? One, and it links to the communication. Talk Community have an initiative called Talk Community Champions, which they've been developing for some time, which is working with individuals, particularly in the more dispersed rural areas, to be that local champion and support and giving advice. And that's the real issue of communication, because there's such a lot of work that is done that we're not making visible. And that was because there was a sort of a lack of a plan. And also in response to looking at the benefits in Ross, I think one of the strengths of Talk Community over the years that we now need to build on is it was responding to each local community's dynamic. And it wasn't saying, you've got to be like this everywhere. So we're doing it like this, we're doing it like that here. And I think the lack of, because we didn't have a very strong evidence base, working with public health, we're already starting to do it with PCNs. We're trying to put a clearer evidence base in place for why we're doing what we're doing in each locality. And we have the potential of a partnership with a academic institution, so a university, I can't remember which one it is, that does work around communities to help us develop that measurement framework. And so I think the next 3 to 4 months, there's going to be some, in a way, some rigour and structure put around the work that will allow you all to understand more what it is doing and what it should be doing, and is it doing the right thing.
It just seemed to me there's best practice out there as well, while not just forcing it on others, but at least giving them the opportunity to look at it. Because if Malvern's going to do it in a different county, it just seems to me there's a lost opportunity in Herefordshire for us to look at it as well. That's all. Thanks.
We did have a hand up from Tony, but I think that everybody else who's a virtual attendee has lost our connection.
It looks like the system's down at the moment, so it looks like it's crashed. Joelle's working on it at the moment. They can't hear or see us, but we can see them.
I think Emily might be answering her question. If that makes sense.
Can you hear us?
They can't hear or see you.
No? No. Okay.
They can't see or hear us.
Okay. It's working on. Okay. This is where communication goes pear-shaped, doesn't it? When we're trying to communicate with our colleagues. Tony's just rolling her eyes now, so I think we need to move on. Just one other question from me. Looking at this strategy now, how does it align with the work with the community paradigm and Herefordshire together?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Hello, Christine Price, Health Watch. It absolutely aligns, and the wheel is a really good example of lots of elements that make up shifting our approach to working with communities. And I think Talk Community is fundamental to playing a part to drive that forward, particularly for the council. And I think it links to the points you were making before about why aren't we using best practice and working with areas where it's working. I don't think Talk Community is there to come in and impose anything. It's there to allow communities to flourish where they can, which is the principle of the paradigm. So Ross is a great example. There's a model there that works well, and I think Talk Community sit alongside that and work out what's needed in addition, whilst at the same time thinking about areas where we perhaps haven't got the nuts and bolts that could make up a model like that. How could the development officers work with local community partners to create that capacity elsewhere? If that's a model that would work to encourage that local provision in other areas of the county where we perhaps haven't got it. But I do think that all of it needs to be led by the evidence of the need. So where are people experiencing needs that can't be met? What are those needs? What kinds of people are experiencing those needs? And that should drive us to look at what needs to be developed. And that is really the principle of the paradigm. And I think it's the same principle for Talk Community. So I think it's just how do we allow Talk Community to do that, and then there are other partners to work alongside it too.
It's going to take another piece of work, isn't it, to make sure everybody's on the same page. And I think Councillor Stark missed the compliment about Ross, because he's trying to get a recommendation going here. Councillor Toynbee.
Yeah, thanks. I don't know if I'm next, but I'll go anyway. Yeah.
We can't come to Tony.
No, okay. Yeah, I could get very political about inequality. It makes me annoyed when central government tells us that we've got to tackle inequality when there's so little we can do about it. And you know, universal services have been virtually demolished over the years. You know, we can't reduce waiting lists. We can't, you know, lower bills. There's very little we can do, but we're doing what we can. I would like to see more about development officers. I think, you know, what people say to us is, you know, yeah, what's Talk Community about, etc., etc. And those people are absolutely key, aren't they? Otherwise, it's, you know, it can get a little bit conceptual. So I would really like to see more about them. They're real people doing concrete roles and concrete posts. So I've just got a couple of questions. That's just a point about development officers, and that I think we should all know more about them. The last government had a programme called Family Hubs and Start for Life, which sounded a bit like Sure Start being reinvented. So I know that was a programme that funded some things in some parts of the country. So I'm just wondering if that still, if we know if that still exists, and if that's a sort of source of support or funding. And just going back to the role of the council, you know, when residents tell us what they need, they never say empowerment. You know, they always say we need decent services. You know, so I think as well as what people need, you know, the sort of work that Christine does about what people need in their lives, I think it's important that we as a council also are very clear about what people need from us. You know, whatever their needs, we are very limited in what we can provide. But the fact is that people look to us. And so what do they need from us as a council? Maybe it is, you know, signposting, maybe it is, but what services do they need? And that we're really clear about what we can provide and what we can't.
I take your point about the development officers, and I do think that's something we should put more information around, and certainly link them up more with you as ward councillors, and you know, that you get that opportunity to meet with them and actually understand the work that they do, and that's something.
They don't know they're on.
They're on. They're on.
I'm going to tell them
Can we just
in case they say something.
hang on?
What I need to do at this point is just pause everything and pause the live stream so that we can try and get this connection right. So, sorry, Joelle, if you could pause that. Thank you. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we did have a bit of a communication breakdown there, but I think we're all back and running, and the virtual participants are able to hear and see us. Yes? Excellent. Okay, so did we have any more questions from committee members?
Can I just comment on the question that Councillor Toynbee raised about the development officers? I don't know, because I can only go by my experience. I get notification every 6 weeks, I think it is, from my development officer who covers the north, so that will be Leominster, to attend their networking meeting. Now, and you do, and quite often I can't do so, but I'm hoping to attend the next one, and I'm also meeting the development officers as a group next week. But I think if you don't get notification from your development workers about when they're having their network meetings, then you should let us know, and then we can make sure that that happens, because I think they are really important meetings and they give you the opportunity to find out exactly what's going on in your areas.
Okay, any Councillor Thomas?
Well, I was just going to say, you mentioned that we're going to, in the meeting next week with all the parish councils, I think it's very important for somebody to really start pushing this. I think I've got about 4 of mine out of my 5 represented there, so we might be able to do something. But it's just not getting through to people in rural areas the advantages, I think. Last night, in our discussion last night, the one lady that runs the coffee morning said, well, will we get officers come out from the council? I said, I don't know. But see, to answer questions, then come back into here, find out the answers, and let these people know. Information's sort of definitely a two-way thing, and a lot of people feel that information coming out of here is probably not as good as it could be sometimes. And so therefore, if we had somebody that was dedicated to go around these hubs, or your development officers went around these hubs, took up these questions and found the answers, that will then make people understand, right, that's a good idea.
We can certainly make sure that the development officer, to raise your specific issue, we can certainly make sure the development officer for that area links in with the relevant people and understands what the needs are, because the needs clearly will be different there from anywhere else. Very happy to pick that up. I wonder, Chair, if I could just respond to Councillor Toynbee's question from before we had our slight glitch. We weren't successful in getting the family hubs funding, and I know that some areas are actually struggling to use that funding, so in some respects, but we are looking at what we can do with some of our own capital funding to support that work. And there is a wider piece around that, which isn't linked necessarily to children, but the bit around pension credit, how we make it clear to people that they should be applying for pension credit, is something, again, we can raise at the parish summit next week.
Thank you. Any other questions from committee members? No. Okay, so thank you all. Toynbee, is it? No? Sorry, we thought Councillor Toynbee, Fagan. We thought, did you have your hand up?
Thank you, Councillor Cocker.
Thank you, Councillor Fagan. Councillor Gandy.
I think probably Leslie will speak about this as well, but outside of the council, I think most villages, most village halls and community centres are members of Community First or ACRE or whatever, and so they provide a list on a regular basis of funding streams that village halls can and community centres, certainly my own my own village hall in my own village has just received some money through that. And there are also, I attended a meeting last week on the funders, so large organisations within Herefordshire who will fund organisations which include village halls and community centres. So there's always Bulmers and there's Eversons who are only too happy to receive bids from village halls and community centres for revenue or capital projects. Because I recognise, as we try and my husband's a chairman of a village hall, so I know the struggle that you go through. But I think with Talk Community, I think, as Richard was saying, I don't think it's something we can force upon any particular village. I think villages some will want to do this and aren't already, and some will want to continue having a village hall and activities that people just go to, and then others will see the advantage of a good neighbour scheme where you actually deal probably more with people who can't reach a community hub or a village hall and need support. So there are varying offers that are available. But I think Leslie probably got more to say. I
think the point you've made about village halls as being really important part of the network is really well made, and I think that we've talked about that going forward. And this recent funding that Councillor Gandy has alerted me to is something that I think that we should promote through that network. And one of the conditions for creating strong communities is to have a space and a place where the community can come together and do things. And that doesn't always have to be a very large, multifunctional building. But what we do have in some places is the need for perhaps some of our hubs are not fantastically fit for purpose. And we do need some buildings that are a bit more multifunctional. So I think we have to have buildings that reflect the needs of different localities and are run in different ways. And I think there could be some merit team convening village hall committees and times and talking to them in a more systematic way. But again, I think that's something we can tease out in the communication strategy. It's like, what do we need to ask people? What do we need to tell people? And how do we tell people in a timely way that it resonates with them and not just a lot of information that goes to everybody all at the same time?
Thank you, Leslie. Any more questions or comments? Councillor.
Carol touched on it, but there's Natalie Gaze-Jennings is a development officer, is there? Yeah. And there's a Talk Community Directory. Yeah. So she keeps me up to speed on it, because I try to start a Relate Now, like a peer support thing in Leominster, and she was putting it on there to get it advertised. So there's things working around that makes people aware. I think it's a marvellous thing myself.
It's good to hear that things are working. Thank you. Okay, so Appendix B is my next thought, and there are some areas of Appendix B that are not completed, and I think Daniel, you're going to take that to Leslie at a further date.
Yeah, fine. I think the gaps in the responses there are largely administrative, so we'll take care of that.
Okay. Thank you. So no other questions on that. So any recommendations? Have we picked up any recommendations for this?
Yes, we have, Chair. One moment.
It doesn't mention Ross. I'm not being allowed to mention Ross.
It doesn't mention anybody, does it?
Where is it, by the way?
Where's Ross? Yeah.
We've always been neglected in this county. We're too far south. Too far south.
Transport links.
Actually, I live in the London Borough of Merton, and there's 5,000 more people in London Borough of Merton than there is in the whole of Herefordshire.
Here we are.
200,000 in that tiny place.
Yeah.
Working people is so interesting. Coming up and seeing how far things are away from each other.
So we have one recommendation.
We have one recommendation, Chair, which I shall read out, that the Talk Community Strategy encourage the adoption of best practice and community support models across Herefordshire.
But without mentioning Ross.
Okay, so what I need to ask now is for
I'm a proposer.
a proposer and a seconder for the recommendations included in the agenda and also on the screen. Those all in favour? Thank you. Thank you very much. That was hard work, wasn't it, with that interlude? But there we are. Thank you very much, Councillor Gandy, Hilary and Leslie. And we're just going to continue.
No, thank you as well. As a scrutiny committee, I mean, you've obviously demonstrated your significant interest in Talk Community, as is mine, by actually going through this with us twice. And that is, I'm really grateful that you have done that. And we will obviously bring back a progress report on this to you so that you know what's going on. And obviously anything that you think of or where you are perhaps not getting communications from your development officer, so you don't know when the network meetings are, please feed it back to us so that we can make sure that that happens, because it is important that we get this out and we make it clear to people exactly what Talk Community and its hubs is about.
Absolutely, thank you. And thank you again. And thank you, Kate, online, and Emily. We'll meet again. Okay, so now we're moving on swiftly to item 9 on the agenda, which is the work programme. And we'll hand over to Daniel to look at this covering report.
Thank you very much, Chair. I circulated to all of you yesterday a copy of the draft work programme for as updated for this month. You would have received that previously as well. I don't propose to go through the document. It's as is, as we see. So it's really all we require from you is that you take a vote and agree to pursue this work programme.
Unless anybody's got any comments, we can go straight to the vote. Have you got a comment?
At the last meeting I mentioned that the committee might want to look at ambulance services, because I do think that's an area that has caused concern in the county, particularly with the centralisation of the accident emergency services at Hereford County. And I just want to make sure that's not lost. Daniel?
Daniel is capturing that as we speak.
Absolutely, I'll make sure that when this committee meets, and I'm not sure if we've got a date in the diary yet for a work programming session for this committee. If we haven't, we'll do one shortly, I think, because I think it's overdue. And obviously we'll put this onto the long list along with all the other topics.
Thank you very much. Councillor Toynbee.
Yeah, I think possibly some of the officer contacts need to be updated in that column. Maybe I'm wrong, but anyway, in that column.
Okay, fine. If you want to send any amendments over to me, I'll be more than happy to put them.
I didn't know who's doing what now.
Oh, okay.
I've just got the feeling some of those people have moved on, but maybe.
All right, then. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that concludes the business of the afternoon. The next meeting is on Monday, the 25th of February, and I thank you all for attending today and have a safe journey home. Thank you very much.